Karl-Anthony Towns has been dominant in 2018-19. He made his second straight All-Star game and should make his second straight All-NBA team. Ratke and Julian Andrews take a deeper look into Towns' season and why he deserves that honor. What's been the most impressive part about Towns' season? Ratke, well, that certainly is a loaded question. We could go in a variety of different directions, but we don't have enough space. Wait, this is the internet. We have all the space. For me, it's Towns' continued development. He's maturing as a player, and after being below average on the defensive end for much of his first 3 years in the league, Towns has grown into a plus defender. Defense, especially for big men in the league, takes time. There are very few centers who enter the league as dominant defensive big men, and none come in like that with the offensive skill set that Towns has. Offensively, Towns is making smarter plays. Teams are doubling him more often, and that's resulted in him averaging a career-high 3.3 assists per game, a mark that ranks 6th among centers in the league. When Towns entered the league, he envisioned himself as this point center type player, and he was more interested in making the flashy play than necessarily the right one. He was 20 years old. Think of the dumb stuff you did when you were 20. Passing a ball behind your back instead of a chest pass is pretty far down on the mistakes you made when you were 20 list. Now, Towns is making the right play. He reads defenses better. The fact that he's getting better and better, and he's only 23, speaks to his work ethic and how good he's going to be. Karl-Anthony Towns block no Anthony Davis pick. Twitter.com/feetcuckstuff Wolves bristle 32-35 at Wolves Nation bruh January 13, 2019 Andrews, it's a tie between the strides Towns has made on defense and his improved decision-making on offense. He may still not be an elite defender, but he's consistently been in the right places and making the right decisions. He's also on pace to set career highs in multiple defensive stat categories. On the offensive end, Towns has been extremely aggressive, and he's figured out how to take advantage of matchups without forcing things. Remember when Towns used to take heat for not taking enough shots or not forcing the issue enough on offense? Seems like the distant past. Towns is about to set career highs in average points and three-pointers per game without sacrificing any of his efficiency. He's grown so much this year, and that's incredibly exciting to watch. Ratke, yes. As someone who is smart with words once said, sometimes the best ability is availability. If we assume Joel Embiid and Nikola Jokic will get 2 of the All-NBA center spots, the last spot is probably between Towns and Anthony Davis, with all due respect to Rudy Gobert. It is worth noting, though, that Towns has played in 71 games this season and Embiid has played in just 61. Davis, for numerous reasons, has played in just 56 games this season, 15 less than Towns. That's significant. Davis has missed 26% of his team's games this season, while Towns has missed just 3 games or 4.0%. Well, averages are great. If you're not playing, you're not helping your team. Yes, that's completely obvious, but I think sometimes we forget that. New rule for all NBA team: you can't miss more than a quarter of the season. That seems fair, right? Andrews, absolutely. All NBA isn't an assessment of the most talented players in the league, it's about identifying the ones who had the best season. Injuries suck, and it's a shame that they come into play, but being able to show up for your team night in and night out is a big part of having a great season. These awards are selected every year. They should be focused on the individual year. I don't buy into the idea that reputation or past performances should play a role in selections, though I'm not naive enough to think they don't. Towns has only missed 3 games this season. That's remarkable for any player that carries as much of a load as Towns does, but especially for a big man. Not to say that players who get injured don't do this, but Towns works extremely hard on his body and keeps himself in incredible shape. That's a part of your job in the NBA, and that effort matters and should be rewarded. Ratke, that's tricky to answer considering I spend more time watching Karl-Anthony Towns play basketball than I do any other player in the league, but just spitballing here, probably only James Harden. In 14 games since the break, Towns has averaged 30.9 points, 14.6 rebounds and 3.8 assists per game while shooting 55.2% from the field and 48.2% from the three-point line. We can go back further than that, though. Over the last 37 games, Towns has averaged 28.1 points, 13.4 rebounds and 3.9 assists per game while shooting 54.8% from the field and 43.2% from the three-point line. This season has been a roller coaster for the Wolves, and a somewhat uncontrollable one. There was the Jimmy Butler drama to start the season, which you'd be foolish to think didn't impact this team's performance early on, Towns included. Glenn Taylor decided to move on from Tom Thibodeau midway through the season, and the injury bug bit the team, and then kept biting until Cam Reynolds, who has a future in the league, was in the rotation. The one consistent has been Towns. People talk about empty stats if they aren't coming in wins. Watch Towns play. Those stats are far from empty. If the Wolves win by 5 with Towns having a good game, that's likely a 10-point loss without Towns. A 5-point loss with Towns would be a 15-point loss without him. Andrews, I've been lucky enough to watch Towns night in and night out this entire season, so I have a ton of respect and appreciation for what he's done in the last month. The only other players I'd throw out there are Harden and Giannis Antetokounmpo. Obviously, we're talking about 2 MVP candidates there, so that's pretty good company. Towns is averaging 30.9 points, 14.6 rebounds and 3.8 assists per game. Those are wild numbers. If Towns can come back next season and replicate those numbers with a healthier supporting cast over the length of the season, he will undoubtedly be in the MVP conversation. Ratke, the fact that Towns is one of 3 players to rank in the top 15 in scoring, top 6 in rebounding and top 10 in blocks is nice. As is the fact that he's shooting 41.2% from the three-point line, ahead of Klay Thompson, Kyrie Irving, J.J. Redick, and Paul George. But for me, it's how efficient he's been on the court. Towns ranks 4th in the entire league with a 27.0 per, a mark think ranks better than Jokic and Embiid, as well as LeBron James, Kawhi Leonard, and Stephen Curry. Towns also ranks 7th in the league with 10.4 win shares. The only other players to rank in the top 4 in per and top 7 in win shares are Antetokounmpo and Harden, the 2 players fighting for the 2018-19 MVP award. It feels like that's telling. Andrews, his percentage is. There are very few players in the league who are able to score at the volume that Towns does and maintain elite efficiency. Among the top 25 scorers in the league, Towns has the second highest field goal percentage, 52.1%, behind Antetokounmpo, and the second highest three-point percentage, 41.2%, behind Curry. It's no exaggeration to call Towns the most efficient scorer in the league, and the fact that he's able to do that while also being the primary focus of opponents' defensive game plans every single night is ridiculously impressive. Towns takes just 17 shots per game, not that many for a primary scorer, and is averaging 24.7 points per game on the season. Many franchises would kill to have someone who could produce at such a high level on that number of attempts. Ratke, this is where things get tricky. The Wolves are 33-41 on the season, 10th in the West, 3 games ahead of Davis's Pelicans. They aren't going to make the playoffs, but that's been no fault of Towns, as you already know if you read the section above. Think about the injuries this team has suffered throughout this season. Even when we look to the beginning of the season, when Butler missed 3 of 13 games due to general soreness, Andrew Wiggins has missed 9 games. Robert Covington, an All-NBA defensive team member last season, has missed 39 games and will miss the rest of the season. Jeff Teague has missed 32 games and will miss the rest of the season. Derrick Rose has missed 23 games and will miss the rest of the season. Tyus Jones has missed 14 games. Right there is 5 rotational players and 3 starters who have missed significant time. Towns can only do so much, so judging him on the not a winning team criteria isn't exactly fair. And if you're going to use it against Towns, you also have to use it on Davis. And then you have to imagine if the 76ers were without Ben Simmons, Jimmy Butler, Ratke and Mike Scott for 30 to 50% of the season. How many wins could Embiid lead the 76ers to? There's no way to know how many wins the team would have had those players stayed healthy, but if I had to guess, this team would be in the playoff hunt if not for the rash of injuries, and the debate of whether or not Towns is an all-NBA player would seem extremely silly. Andrews, depends on what this is. Towns should be a lock for an all-NBA berth no matter what, but we'd probably be talking more about his assist numbers if his supporting cast managed to stay healthy. He also might not be scoring quite as much. If this is the Wolves season in general, yes, absolutely. The Wolves were 12-8 with Robert Covington in the lineup this season. When Jeff Teague was healthy and playing well, the Wolves were also much better. They went 12-3 when he had double-digit assists. As the best player on this team, Towns does have a responsibility to carry his squad to wins, but it's also unrealistic to expect him to deliver victories with no help. The NBA is as deep and talented as it ever has been, and no star is expected to do things all by themselves. Injuries have changed the look of the Wolves season, but they don't take away from what Towns has accomplished on an individual level.